everyone, this is Big Containment and we are back again, and here now we have another fun video for you, and this will be a breakdown of whom I deem are the best Batman villains. Now, alongside Spiderman, we all agree that Batman has the most extensive gallery of villains, so many distinctive characters, not necessarily because of their superpowers as such, as the majority of them are far more grounded. They are far more renowned for their origins and their personalities and philosophies in terms of their criminal activities. They tend to be very complex and layered characters, which is why so many fans find them fascinating. So the criteria I'm using here within this breakdown is that the villains who I deem the most compelling are the ones who have the most compelling motivations and ideologies. Not just robbing criminals or banks to get rich. What's driving them to do what they do, their methodologies and strategies for performing their crimes, for me is what really makes them interesting and compelling. Now, the second criteria that I'm using for this breakdown is that they can go toe to toe with Batman in terms of physicality or intelligence, two attributes that people associate most with the character. If a villain is able to be Batman's equal or superior in either of these fields, then it makes them for a far more threatening antagonist. Also to note on this list that I will be looking at the original versions of these characters in their concepts and design, not essentially the performances or interpretations from movies or television shows. So no rebooted or retcon versions of the characters. So here we go down with a breakdown of who I deem to be are the best Batman villains overall. So the first villain we're going to talk about within this breakdown, and that is the Joker. Without question, the most famous and iconic of Batman's villains, and dare I say the most overused, the Joker by design isn't as layered or deeper character as other villains on this list. He's primarily more of a device to generate those elements of shock, terror and tension, and I suppose in many ways that's why he remains one of Batman's most best villains. A complete violent psychopath who performs random acts of violence just for his own entertainment. This will always make him compelling to some extent. He truly represents the essence of pure unrelenting evil that you present Batman against. Now, despite certain stories such as The Killing Joke, which presents a backstory for the character really works best without one. Purely an unsympathetic agent of chaos, insane, unpredictable, dangerous in its absolute purest form, and that's why despite his lack of depth, he still remains one of Batman's best villains. The next villain on this list, and that is the Scarecrow, one of the most interesting and fascinating characters and villains within the Batman universe. The Scarecrow's power or ability as such, of course, is his fear toxin, impacting people with their worst fears and nightmares, and this is a great ironic parallel with Batman, who also uses that symbolism of fear against criminals. And for any story involving the Scarecrow, it's always interesting seeing the nightmares of certain characters, which always gives a much more compelling edge to the Scarecrow story arc. And of course, he can take on any enemies without any physical contact, and this is what makes him a far more powerful and dangerous villain. And I've always genuinely liked the aesthetic and design of the character itself. Most interpretations give him that scrawny, freaky look in keeping with the Scarecrow concept itself, making him as distinctive as ever. So without doubt one of the best and most compelling Batman villains, I feel the Scarecrow is one of also the most interesting characters that could generate really lots of interesting ideas and elements when drawing other characters into his own story arcs. The next villain on this list is the Mad Hatter. Another villain very influential in controlling people's psychosis. Jervis Tetch, initially a neuroscientist, using mind-controlled devices to manipulate the minds of his enemies. He has a very much of a small, frail appearance, very similar to Mr. Mxyzptlk from the Superman universe, and very much of his character is based on the same name from the Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland novel series, and this was emphasised very much in the character's interpretation from both the Batman the Animated Series and the Gotham Fox series as well. With his expertise, he's equally as potentially more impactful and influential than the Scarecrow, as he can actually control people, and that ability again gives him an advantage over any physical confrontation against Batman, and that's why for me the Mad Hatter remains a truly great adversary and villain within all of the Batman universe. The next villain on this list, and that is the Riddler, one of the most iconic Batman villains Edward Nigma's The Riddler doesn't have any superpowers as such, but in many ways his special ability is his intelligence, which is mostly on a superior level to everybody else, even Batman. The real interesting element to the Riddler is that his crimes are not about being vengeful or violent, it's more about playing a game, testing his antagonists to see if they can match his own intellect. He of course does this by leaving specific riddles before and after his crimes to Batman or the Gotham Police Department, so there's always a guessing narrative for the viewer to solve, which makes the stories revolving around the Riddler far more engrossing. The fact that he gives his opponents a chance to catch him shows an extreme level of confidence and, dare I say, egotism, and there's always a conviction that you may have yourself within the character. He's very much of a self-obsessive, more egotistical personality. If he's ever caught, it's more about how he was caught as opposed to the fact that he's caught in the first place. So there's a very eccentric side to the character which can be fun to write and follow in terms of his storyline, and along with his high intellect, this is why for me the Riddler remains one of the Batman's best villains overall, and very compelling and very interesting, and several stories can make him far more of an intense, complex character, but this is a character who is always control and always focused in what he's doing, and that for me makes him a far more dangerous villain than, say, the Joker overall. So by far one of the best and most compelling villains within all of Batman's universe, and that is the Riddler. The next villain that we have on this list, and that is Bane. Now throughout this countdown we've had villains who can compete intellectually with Batman, but now with Bane we are talking about someone who's superior to Batman on a physical basis, which automatically distinguishes him from other villains, and it always makes for a far more thrilling climax whenever Batman has to struggle to overpower someone physically. Bane's super strength of course comes from the Venom serum, which gives him his iconic look of having the serum tubes attached to the back of his neck. A hulking figure in most interpretations. His original inception of course has him round about 6 foot to 7 foot overall with a mask, and most stories have him speaking multiple languages, which again adds to his overall intelligence. But what's perhaps not been emphasised enough throughout the various interpretations of the character is the fact that he's very much of a highly skilled fighter and very intelligent, and also a combat strategist, and this was very much the inception of his character during the famous Nightfall story arc, where Bane releases all of the criminal within Arkham for Batman to deal with, leaving him exhausted and vulnerable, and then Bane strikes at the right time, of course with the iconic scene breaking Batman's back. And that story arc always keeps Bane amongst the most famous of Batman's villains, perhaps presenting the ultimate challenge for Batman both in terms of physicality and intelligence, definitely for me making him one of the most compelling antagonists, bringing that sense of suspense and tension. Now most live action versions have recognised the physical threat but have missed the mark in terms of the intelligence, which gives the character far more menace, and that without doubt makes him one of Batman's most formidable foes, so one of the greatest and most compelling villains in Bane in terms of the Batman universe. So the runner-up in this list in terms of the best overall Batman villains, and that is Ra's al Ghul. Presenting perhaps the most encompassing and mysterious villain within all of the Batman universe, Ra's al Ghul certainly has that more regal and commanding sense in terms of Batman's antagonist. Ra's al Ghul of course is very distinguished as the leader or the creator of the famous League of Assassins. He also is deemed for having lived for several decades, if not immortal, because of his entering the famous Lazarus Pit, and this can give him very much super strength and physicality, even superior to Batman. And with this character you of course introduce many supernatural elements, which makes him a truly fascinating and superb villain overall. And of course we have extra context in terms of the villain with the fact that his daughter Talia al Ghul, and we all know that she has a relationship with Bruce Wayne and they have an eventual son in Damian Wayne as well. So in terms of Ra's al Ghul, there are so many interesting elements and so many high potential in terms of storytelling beats and elements that you can take the character. He can of course match Batman physically as well as intelligence, and also in terms of wisdom and experience, which truly makes him an awesome and really dangerous villain. So a great runner-up in this series at number 2, one of the all-time best classic Batman antagonists, and that is Ra's al Ghul. And so we come to number 1 on this list, who I deem is the best, most compelling Batman villain ever, and that is TwoFace. As we all know, he was originally District Attorney Harvey Dent, who became disfigured in court where a criminal poured acid all over him. The psychological trauma of that event created a split personality. On one hand, we had the idealistic crusader of justice, and that was pitted very much against the more psychotic criminal gangster. And it's that inner dual battle that really makes TwoFace such a complex personality. He very much reflects the same schizophrenic tendencies that we see in Batman. We see that Bruce Wayne himself is able to contain that inner conflict where Harvey isn't as successful in the same achievement. So we get that contrast between the two characters. But TwoFace isn't just a crazy killer like the Joker. His motivation too is to exhibit some sense of justice. It's just that he will go to the far more extreme levels that Batman won't in order to carry out that sense of justice. Now, for all of the darker nature of the character, he still has a sense of order and process. This is very much typified, no more so than the iconic decision making that he makes by flipping the coin to decide whether to exhibit his level of justification and reckoning or not. Now, many interpretations have TwoFace originally have a close connection to Bruce Wayne as Harvey Dent in terms of either friendship or as a major partner and ally in working together to combat crime. So there always remains a far more personal resonance between Batman and TwoFace, which adds a lot more weight and gravitas to their overall confrontations. Batman will always have a far more sympathetic attitude towards TwoFace because he knows deep down there is a real good person inside of Harvey Dent. And there also remains a mirror image when Batman confronts TwoFace because Batman potentially the same type of personality. You always feel that there's always that 1 or 2 elements that could push Batman into having that split personality and go over the extremes just like TwoFace. So there's always that relation between the two characters, and the best villains always bring out something else within the hero themselves in terms of their overall ability or their reactions or their feelings and how they approach their sense of heroism as well. And when we throw all of those factors into play, that's for the main reason why I believe TwoFace is the best and most compelling of all Batman villains within his overall universe. So those are my thoughts and feelings of who I deem are the most best and most compelling Batman villains overall. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you disagree with any of my choices or you feel there are certain villains that I've left out, let me know in the comments and we can have further discussions in future videos as well. If there are any other iconic superheroes that you would like to see me do further breakdowns of their most powerful and compelling villains, then please also let me know in the comments as well, and I'll provide a breakdown as well within that particular context. Please also hit and like those subscription buttons and notifications so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. I really hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of who I deem the best Batman villains are within this entire universe. So thank you very much for watching. That's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.